Good morning, friends. Really nice to be here with you guys, actually. I was going to say nice, but it's really nice. What is it to fail spiritually? I got this topic last year. Did I pass or fail? I'm not totally sure. But here I am again. I found myself asking that question a little bit this week. What is it to fail? Maybe not even spiritually, just what is it to fail? And it's an interesting thing to contemplate. I think we all need to do it if we're being honest with ourselves. And, the thought that I had was maybe a more important question is, what is it to win? What is it we're trying to accomplish? And that could give us some good context so that we actually understand what we're talking about. Because if we're being totally truthful, sometimes we don't actually know if we're winning or we're losing. Oftentimes in life, I found that I will be soaring pretty high and think that I'm kicking butt and taking names out there, only to fall flat on my face and realize I wasn't actually winning at all. And oftentimes it's the other way around, where it feels like we're not really making much progress at all, that we've kind of hit a rut and things aren't going the way we want them to. And it's almost like the best things happen when that starts to happen. It's like we actually open up a little bit more to God, and we have the humbleness required to actually receive from Him. So what I'm trying to say is that from the outward looks of things, we can't really gauge it. That winning and losing, the losses and gains that we experience in life, we don't really know what the heck is going on if we're looking at this from our mind and from the intellect, from this ego. We've got to step beyond that to figure out what's going on. And so, I want to talk a little bit about just what it is to win. What is it to win spiritually? It's a good question. This is a temple of self-realization. And, this morning I felt it really strongly just coming back here. I had the opportunity to leave for about a month, which was a long time for me to be away. And, and I really felt drawn to where I was at also, and I loved being there. And then when I come back into a place like this, it gives the purpose again for what we're actually doing here. I had a moment when I was walking out of the vestry this morning, and Bhaktan was walking in the back door. And I don't even know if he noticed me as much as I looked right at his eyes. And I knew what Bhaktan was doing here. He's here for self-realization. It was in his eyes. I just saw that little twinkle. And that's the link that unites all of us and that brings us here. It's not the outward form. It's the actual aspiration of our soul to realize God. And so what is that realization? What is it to realize God? I had an interesting image come into my mind last night when I meditated on that thought. And I just want to ask you guys all to close your eyes now and just sit up straight. And let's just imagine for a second that I am not this body. I am not this person sitting in some church. I am actually a spirit. I am actually the energy and the spirit that is in all of life. And as I started to have that thought, I felt myself sitting in this space, only I was up in that cupola. And so I invite you to keep your eyes closed and imagine yourself, if you want to be like Lahiri, you can be floating in the top of the cupola. Or maybe there's a bench up there and you're just really relaxed and you're comfortable. And you're sitting up at the central point of this sacred space. And you're looking down on everyone in this room. And you're not looking through the lens of your identity and of your ego. You're looking at everyone through the eyes of God. And here you see all these children coming together, trying to purify their hearts, and each in their own way, each in their own unique way. There's no judgment, there's no wishing anyone was any different. But with each person, you can look right into them and see who their soul is and what lessons they need to learn to completely realize that universal consciousness. When we step outside of ourselves and we start to look at each other and the whole world through this lens of universality, the separations can go away. There's no longer you and I, us versus them, my political party and your political party. None of those things actually matter. There is no separation. And as you feel to, you can open your eyes if you want to, or you can just stay inward. We're at an incredible moment right now as humanity, and there's a lot of forces that are trying to pull us back into separative consciousness. That consciousness which says this is good and this is bad. This is right and this is wrong. This is darkness and this is light. Now, in a dualistic sense, like Padma brought up last week, this creation is duality. We acknowledge that there is these polar opposites. And yet, from a place of God consciousness and universal consciousness, we don't feel that anymore. We don't believe that anymore. We've realized that within everything and everyone is just the single reflection of God. When I think about the words of Jesus, and I just happened to be in the Ozarks, and the only begotten Son, which gets manifested, of course, that Jesus himself was the only begotten Son. And in some ways it's very sweet. They love Jesus as much as you could possibly love Jesus down there. And yet they don't understand the true meaning of the only begotten Son. I had a chance to read some of Master's original teachings on the Bible while I was there, and he used the words, the sole reflection of God is in everything, every particle of creation. And I thought about that for a second. The sole reflection. It's the only thing. It's the only reflection in everything. That's an amazing statement. This is where we're going, is to realize this, that there is simply nothing else. The only reflection in all of life, in all of creation, is that of God. And that's the true Christ consciousness, of course, that Jesus brought, was for us to wake up and realize that, not just to realize that he had. But even in that context, it's nice to realize that people are able to even recognize it in him, because that's the starting point. If we can recognize that potential in someone else, we can start to recognize that potential in ourselves. So that's a thought for us about what maybe victory looks like. This idea that we have in ourselves this universal consciousness. So how do we start to manifest that in our life and in our actual thoughts and how we perceive the world? I often like this story that I came across one time. It's a great guru and disciple in India, and the disciple is Swami Satchidananda. And it was the first time he was reading the words of the saint who would become his master, Papa Ramdas. And in the words it said, "Everything in this world is exactly as it ought to be." And Satchidananda read that and he thought to himself, whoever said that must be a really great man. And he went to the ashram and immediately became his disciple. Because this is the actual truth, is that everything in our lives, everything that's happening in the world is exactly as it ought to be. with a certain caveat, that we understand what the true victory is, that we understand what the true purpose of life is, and that is self-realization. Without this fundamental understanding for why we're here and what we're doing, nothing makes any sense. But with that, everything makes perfect sense. Everything that comes to us, every challenge we experience, every time we fall, becomes God's grace to wake us up. It's an amazing realization to have. No longer can we wallow in blaming anyone else for anything, or finding all the problems that's wrong with everything, because there's a lot of them if we want to think about it like that. But instead, we can start to recognize that everything has its purpose. Another thing that I was able to do, and Hailey was with me for this, was we were able to visit Springfield, Illinois. It's just a couple hours from St. Louis, where my family lives, and we were able to visit the Abraham Lincoln Museum and the tomb of Lincoln, which the tomb is a world-class monument. And if any of you find yourselves in Illinois at any point, it's the nicest cemetery I've ever seen. Cemeteries are very nice, by the way. And this tomb is really remarkable. And it really helps you to feel close to Lincoln, actually. And when we look around at what's going on in the world right now, we could say, yeah, but we're called to action also. We're in the world, so we must do something. And so this is the challenge that we're up against, to maintain a universal consciousness, to not judge and separate everyone, and yet to be in the world and do that which we feel like is ours to do. How the heck do we do this? It's not easy if you're sincerely trying to do it. But when I tuned into Lincoln, he gives us a wonderful roadmap, because here's the president who led us through the Civil War not that long ago. Hundreds of thousands of people of our own country fighting each other and dying for this war, which we would like to think was avoidable, but wasn't. And when I looked into this more and more, I came across something from Lincoln that just really left me in awe. Because often historians will talk about Lincoln as if he was not a religious person. This has been called, John Hay, who was one of his secretaries, found this in Lincoln's desk after Lincoln had already died, written in Lincoln's handwriting, and has since become known as the Meditation on the Divine Will. And I read this to us now so that we have an understanding of what it's like for us to be in this world and to not choose sides, to have the universal consciousness, but to also do what God has given us to do. Because how the heck do you lead the country through the Civil War and free slaves without that? So this is what Lincoln says. The will of God prevails. The will of God prevails. In great contests, each party claims to act in accordance with the will of God. Both may be, and one must be, wrong. God cannot be for and against the same thing at the same time. In the present Civil War, it is quite possible that God's purpose is something different from the purpose of either party. And yet the human instrumentalities, working just as they do, are of the best adaptation to effect his purpose. I am almost ready to say that this is probably true. That God wills this contest and wills that it shall not yet end. By his mere great power on the minds of the now contestants, he could have either saved or destroyed the Union without a human contest. Yet the contest began, and having begun, he could give the final victory to either side any day. Yet the contest proceeds. Ultimately, we can look back now and see how the Civil War ended, and see the 13th Amendment was passed, and that slaves were freed, and rejoice in these things. But in the context of when that was happening, these were not givens. And yet Lincoln did not let himself get swept up into fervor of choosing a side and of hating anyone in this world. leading the country through that. Very few souls would even be capable of imagining they could do it, but he actually did it. It's an amazing thing. And so if he can do that, what must we do? We must maintain this universal understanding of life. We must not fall into the separations which want to judge and blame everyone else for the things going on in us. Even when I think of masks and the polarity around it. St. John of the Cross was locked in a prison cell for 9 months. Talk about a mask. And what did he do with that time? He went into bliss. We have no excuses, guys. We need to move. The point of a place like Ananda is that we don't choose sides, that we are truly universal. And so that's really what I want to share with us all today, is that no matter what happens going forward, self-realization is still the purpose. Everything that happens is still perfect for each one of us. And this is the truth we come back to over and over and over again until we know it perfectly in every atom of our being. I think the other part of on maybe a lighter topic that I want to just share is that the other choice we have right now is Christmas. And December, you could say December just started, but I don't know if we've ever needed Christmas as much in my lifetime as we need it right now. And so as much as we could focus on any plethora of things, I just invite us all to focus on the spirit of Christmas right now. At the farm, we've been affirming we're going to watch Christmas movies every other day, which is more like every fourth day. But some nights we sing together, and some nights we do yoga. So there's always something nice. But for us to really right now start tuning into the spirit of Christmas, the kindness that comes every year at this time of year, and the hope that is just born anew, that these are things we choose in our own hearts and that we can share with everyone. And the more subtly we share them, actually, the better. The more simply we share them, the better. So this is really the choice that is with us all year, but Christmas does give us this outward reminder that it's time for us to choose that again and to serve each other first. I think one of the things that I see, and I've seen in my life, and what I see in people around me when people start to maybe struggle with things or focus on the downward pulling energies that are on this plane, we've forgotten to serve each other. And as long as we remember what we're doing here, that our job is actually to serve one another, everything is going to be A-okay. We're going to feel great about everything. I think about that story in Mark in the Bible when I think it's Andrew and Philip want to sit on the sides of Jesus. And they ask him, we sit on your left and your right side. And Jesus says, that's not mine to give. I don't get to decide that. And then he goes on to speak to all the disciples and say, he amongst you who serves all the rest will be the greatest. And this is really our task right now in this world. It's to serve those in our life and to serve everyone God gives us in the simple ways that we can, and to lift each other up along the way. So what is it to fail? What is it to win? And let's start winning. Jai Guru.